Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/UNC-knowledge, twitter.com/UNC-knowledge. Born in Avignon on Christmas Day 1923, Rene Girard is the author of works that have been published in more than 24 languages, including The Scapegoat and Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. His latest book, Archivé Clausewitz, will be published in the United States in 2010 as Battling to the End: Politics, War, and Apocalypse. In 2005, Professor Girard received the highest honor in France, induction as one of the 40 members of the Académie Française. One source of Rene Girard's thinking, a close reading of The Golden Bough, Sir James Fraser's classic study of ancient myths. Published in 1890, The Golden Bough explained that myths throughout the ancient world contained a central element, the periodic sacrifice of a sacred king, dying and then resurrected. Christianity, The Golden Bough suggested, represented nothing but one more such myth, a point to which we will return. Rene Girard, bienvenue.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Segment 1, Insights. Mimetic desire. To quote one of your interpreters, Gil Bailey, quote, "Desire, as distinguished from animal appetite, is always aroused by the desire of another." Explain.
If, in order to invent desire, because desire is not natural, desire is not animal. Is it human? We don't know. It sometimes is human, sometimes it seems very inhuman. But how is it born? I think desire usually is born out of the contemplation of someone else who is desiring and who designates to you the object is desiring as desirable.
So every college student who wants to be an investment banker, obvious, they want to fly around in their own jet and
Yes.
drive a Maserati. But how does this apply to the ancient world?
Well, to the ancient world, it has to apply in the same fashion. The objects are different, but the structure of desire, the triangular relationship of desire, object, model, and subject, are the same.
Serpent, Eve, apple.
Serpent in the mimetic theory of desire is a symbol, an image of the mediator. In other words, the one who directs the subject towards the bad desire. The churches, who know what they're talking about much better than most people think, know that example is the key to bad as well as good behavior. And this is nothing but what I call mimetic desire.
So that's why the church uses the phrase the occasion of sin.
Yes.
Now, Gil Bailey once again, the imitative nature of desire leads to conflict.
It leads to conflict, and this is both something very obvious and which is a paradox for most people when they first realize it. If you imitate the desire of someone else, you admire that someone else, or that someone else may be your best friend. But as soon as you both desire the same object, and the objects really desirable exist only in one copy.
In ones.
So I shouldn't say copy because it's not a copy. It's the original.
There is only one
There is only one
Helen of Troy.
Original. And therefore they have to fight. Therefore the theatrical situation par excellence is a situation of two people desiring the same object because they designate that object to each other. Once the imitated subject realizes he is imitated, this reinforces his desire. He said, I certainly selected the right object. As soon as this man saw her, he fell in love with her, like I did. Therefore, we are right. Therefore, I'm more convinced than ever that I should desire her. Therefore, he's my enemy.
All right. I'm chuckling because as the audience will learn, as simple as it sounds, it explains everything in a way. Let me quote you yourself, Rene, this time. If this moves on to your second basic insight, the violence and the sacred. If there is a normal order in societies, it must be the fruit of an anterior crisis. Explain.
It must be the result of an anterior crisis because people polarize around objects of desire. And this can be regarded as true even for food, for shelter, for places where you can live and so forth. So you can be sure that the human population in prehistorical time gathered around the same places because they were desirable, because there was water there and so forth. And they were united by that same desire. And they were separated because very often there was not enough of whatever was needed, water, shelter, food, and they started to fight. That's why I don't think we should say man is so bad, that he will always fight with his fellow man, even when he associates. The people he associates most closely with are the people he fights most often with. They do because they are both moving toward the same thing. And these things are never in sufficient number. Or even if they are, you tend to trust your model.
All right.
Because you admire him. So you say, he's seen in the object something more than I saw, and therefore I must follow him more than ever. And this works both ways. As the one who desires first is imitated in his desire, he's confirmed in that desire. But the conflictual situation is all over the place, it's coming from everywhere.
All right. Segment 2, the scapegoating mechanism. Let's say we're in the prehistoric world. You're describing the most basic sources of conflict, and now the most basic means of resolving conflict.
Yeah, because the question is how are such conflicts resolved? They have to be resolved at least part of the time for groups of human beings to gather permanently together and so forth.
So the question is, how do societies manage to exist?
People imitate each other. People imitate each other in their desire. But they also imitate each other in their dislikes, I just said. And therefore, when you have a conflict which is particularly visible and obvious and so forth, there will be a tendency for the neighbors of the people concerned to move with the stronger of the two, the most convincing of the two, and be on his side against the other one. And when you have a second one, you have a third one, a fourth one, it becomes easier and easier. And the mimetic, because all this is always mimetic. You see, that's the thing you have to see. The real motor is imitation each time. Imitation of friendship, imitation of desire, and imitation of conflict. So, if it is so, there should not be any human society. It should be impossible.
Total conflict all the time.
Total conflict all the time. But if you have that total conflict, you also have a way in which this conflict is automatically, cancelled and resolved by. And it is when people imitate no longer the choice of opponent, but also what they feel about everything. And they are all going to gather against the same opponent. if one really feels convinced that one of the people there is more guilty than the other one. The notion of guilt will appear in the collective interplay of these people. And as soon as this happens, it gathers speeds, and ultimately one victim must be killed or driven out or otherwise gotten rid of. And this is what I call this, what not I, but everybody calls the scapegoat.